looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Hey folks, welcome to the program. It is Thursday night, August, what is it? It's 26th today. My days are all melting together with all the stuff that's going on. Sorry I'm a few minutes late tonight. Just taking care of some familial business and ran a little bit overtime. So we'll just run overtime at the end tonight. How about that? So welcome to the program. This is my show, of course, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. Take a look at their schedule and see all the other shows that are out there, and see the other times of the day where you can catch reruns of this show all throughout the day. And as well, you are watching here on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. Come on over, join the live chat room going on right now. I see you all over here. My chat room's all over there to the right of my screen. And I see you all there. I appreciate the fact that you would take your time to come on in and spend it here with me on my show. Pardon me 1 second. Drinking carbonated beverage. Now, I don't drink a lot of those. We keep bottled water around the house. I don't like the sink water that comes in here in New Richmond, Wisconsin. And so it's just a personal thing. They once had some kind of bacteria that came off of the river a few years back. And ever since then, I just have in the back of my head, I don't like drinking the city water here. And so we buy bottled water. I don't like regurgitated water, refurbished water, purified water. I like to buy spring water. And so we buy bottled spring waters. And when we run out is about the only time I start drinking soda pop, if we've run out of bottled water. And we do have a filter that we put on the kitchen sink, but it's about the shape of this microphone. It looks like that, and it screws onto the front sink. And so I'm not real keen on tap water around here, but there you go. And so I'm drinking a soda pop tonight. And by the way, I never drink these anymore. A Dr. Pepper. I haven't had a Dr. Pepper, and I've got a Diet Dr. Pepper. Not because I'm on a diet, but because I'm diabetic and I have to drink sugar-free stuff. So I haven't bought one of these for a long time, and I had it sitting here, and I opened it, and I pulled it up. I drink Diet Pepsi, and so I was expecting, my brain was expecting the Pepsi taste, and I got the Dr. Pepper taste instead. So it was like, Dr. Pepper. You know what Dr. Pepper is? It's really basically a carbonated prune juice. That's the flavor you're tasting in Dr. Pepper. So there you go. So I'm drinking soda pop tonight, and it's carbonated. So if I get a little belchy, you'll have to pardon me. If you are not a member of this channel, go on and click the join button down below. You'll see 3 ways to become a member. And I appreciate all of those of you who are. And we've got to start doing up as soon as we get into the new digs in the next couple of weeks. We'll probably start doing some more on those perks and the newsletters and things like that. Of course, we're going to Disney World, the whole family, sometime toward the end of September. It's like the 24th or something for a week. My daughter's surprised us all and got us all tickets to go to Disney World. And we're staying on one of the big resorts on site. Then we're going to go over and see Harry Potter World at Universal and all those other things. So I'm pretty geeked about that part of it anyway. I don't do spinny rides anymore, by the way, at my age. Can't do them anymore. I get like car sick. So anyway, I had to catch Doug while he was lighting up there. Hey, Doug. How you doing, brother?
All right.
When I lost a lot of weight it was just before I met Rainey. Back about 16 years ago, I dropped about 70 pounds. And I did it by biking every day. I was just biking like you do your walking every day. Mine was biking. I would bike 6 miles a day. Sometimes as it went on, I started biking 12 miles a day. And I just changed out my diet. I said, not going to eat the sugary stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I went into my doc and he goes, wow, you've lost a lot of weight. And I just did your A1C for your diabetes. He says, if I didn't know you had diabetes, I wouldn't know you had diabetes. He said, fantastic job. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, doc, I cut out all the sugar. I bike 6 miles a day and I smoke 2 packs a day. And he said, well, God damn it, Scott, he said to me. And I said, I'm kidding, doc, I'm kidding. I said, I only smoke 1 pack a day. So that was back 16 years ago. So I wanted to catch you smoking. That's all. So how you doing, brother?
Pretty good. Today was not a bad day, but
hurricane day?
Well, no, a tiresome day because I'm trying to build something on the side of my building to where I don't have to cover my tires with a tarp. So
sure.
I'm doing a lean roof over the tires, and it was 91, which wasn't bad, but it felt like 116
with the humidity and the dew point.
Yeah, it was.
I would not survive in the tropical rainforest. I can tell you what. So,
well, I was trying to tell my dad to slow down. My dad is 72 years old, just got over COVID.
Yeah. How's he doing?
He's doing pretty good. He was out there with me, and we were going along, and it was getting hot. And he's like, "Oh, I need to take a break." So I got him some. I bring Pedialyte to work.
Yeah.
He asked me about. He's like, "Do you have any Pedialyte?" And I think I surprised him when I said yes.
Yes, I do, Dad.
So I gave him one of those, and he sat down for 2 minutes, and he's like, "Oh." He got up and started working again. I'm like, dude, sit down. You know,
Rainey does some concoction. She uses the little packets of powdered Pedialyte, mixes it with soda water and whatever flavors she does. And she mixes that up, puts it in an ice and does shaker with it. Well, she doesn't do the shaker because the carbonation will go over. She must stir it. And man, that tastes good sometimes on a really hot day. Well, and it replenishes your electrolytes.
Yeah, well, what my father does, he does a lot of work out in his yard, in the shop, and everything like that. What he does, he has a regimen. In the morning, he'll wake up and drink 8 ounces of Pedialyte, and then drink water for the rest of the day.
Sure.
After that, he does what he drinks a little beer and a little bit of soda, but not much.
Sure. I get it.
And today it was just Pedialyte. He downed the whole bottle of Pedialyte, and it was one of the big ones you get from Walmart.
Yeah.
And look, as he was leaving, there was a thunderstorm coming in. I said, just, you know what? I'm going to feel bad if you die. Don't die tonight.
Don't die tonight, Dad. Yeah, that's a good one.
So I abused my 72-year-old father in the 116-degree heat.
Sure.
Roughly 4 days before a major hurricane is supposed to hit us.
Field guy says, me and Doug are doomed with the hurricane. Man, that's why we were down there in Louisiana. We were working with houses that had lost everything. They lost their roofs and needed all kinds of reconstruction. and because of the last two hurricanes that both hit last summer, August and September. And there were a lot of people that they were just tired out. They didn't have insurance or they weren't getting things done or whatever. Now they're going to get all hit again. And so
the way they're looking at it, the track is supposed to go further east. So unfortunately, Field Guy's going to get the brunt of it. Hopefully Lake Charles doesn't get it. You know, I just wish they would, I wish they would just, this storm would just go off. Now, I don't want to say, put it off on somebody else, but
right.
Mexico or something like that.
Let's see. I wish it would just hit the Yucatan Peninsula. That's it. So, yeah.
It's threading that needle between Yucatan Peninsula and like the and Jamaica.
Yes.
And they're also saying that it could be a Category 4.
Wow. And it could veer north and hit you guys all over again. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we don't have the hurricanes up here. It's been hot and humid. That's about it. I don't like humidity. Storms bring humidity. So if you guys get hit down there, we'll get your humidity a couple of days later. The whole Gulf Stream thing just brings it up here. Let's see. I saw something somebody said I was going to comment on, but now I don't see it and I don't remember what it was, so I won't comment on it. So the business is going well, brother?
It's been slow the last 2 weeks because, with school starting up.
Sure.
That, but like I said, I mean, you're going to have high times and you're going to have low times. And you know what?
That's right.
Taking over in June probably wasn't the best idea because, the summer, everybody's away for vacation. But I'm not worried. We got a good established spot where it's at. It's been there for 29 years. So,
yeah.
They'll start coming back.
Well, I hope that it all continues to go well for you, brother. And I appreciate your calling in.
All right.
We could sit and talk for an hour, but we're not going to. So we'll talk another time. I'm glad to see your face, though. I'm glad to see your face. I'm glad you're doing okay. All right, brother. I'm going to remove you now. I'm going to kick you out of my studio. All right. And so we'll see you again, Doug. And let's see. Let's move on. Hey, Sean Stroik and the Intrepids, he says. Welcome to the show. And everybody, by the way, let me just say, Field Guy, welcome to the show. Steve Clark, Barbie D is here. Field Guy is here. Who else we got? Oh, you guys were interchanging at the very beginning. Wait for it. That wasn't a big one, but it was there. And I didn't want to reach for the mute button. Let's see, we got, who else? Susie Q is here. Welcome, Susie Q. Glad you made it. And we have Texas Joe. Good to see you, brother. And Bad Dame for America. I wonder who you're talking about. Oh, Day. Gotcha. And Steve Clark. I don't know if I said hi a little earlier. Welcome. And who else coming in? Morgan Snow. And Roger Rabbit. And who else we got? Michelle Canham Free is in the chat room. And so, folks, those of you who are not in the chat room and don't see this, not everybody who listens to this show comes onto this channel, or do they come into the chat room. So some of the people who are here when we're doing live shows, like we've been doing for 6 months, it's nice to come in and say, hey, everybody, welcome to the show. And I appreciate it. Hey, CW, good to see you. Scott Allen, good to see you, brother. And if I happen to see you guys when you slip in, I will call you up. And look who. Now we got Field Guy. How you doing, Field Guy? Good to see you, brother. What's going on?
Well, Mother Nature's on the warpath again.
Always.
Yeah, we got a storm, and actually it's coming right where I'm at. So,
well, you're outside of New Orleans, so how did they live there? How did they end up building a lasting civilization there out of a swamp? That's crazy.
The French are smart, apparently. I don't know.
I guess.
They
Sacre bleu.
Yeah, I was looking at the track when I was at work, and looking at this, and I go, "Oh, great! Let's see." I'm pulling up the Google Maps, and I'm like, "Okay, there's my place. That's where the hurricane's going to hit. About the same area."
There you go. Oh well, okay. Batten down the hatches, brother. So what's going on in your world other than that? What's happening?
Let's see. Work. Off tomorrow.
Beard's growing back, I see.
Oh, yeah, they don't really care about that at work.
Yeah, you're kind of like Samson. You know, they cut his hair, but it grew back.
This all used to be red at one point. Now it's all gray and black.
Dude, you're preaching to the choir right there. Mine was red like Sam's, my son Sam. And then the next time I grew my beard out, it was white. I let too many years go through. Yeah.
I used to have a few red streaks in my hair. What's left of it. I wear hats.
I did too. Much. It was, no, I take that back. It was more a blonde, a brown blonde, dark blonde, I guess you'd call it. And then there were, when the light would hit it just right, there'd be red tones. Then it turned white. So
I got everything. I got black, red, brown.
Yeah.
Red, white.
Yeah. There's Steve Clark again. Good to see you, Steve. Welcome to the program. You must have left and come back in. Master Finn. I see him in here. I must have missed him earlier. So welcome, Master Finn.
My hair breathes just fine. It's just the hat that I wear. It's just
your hair is looking awfully styling right there, boy. Whew.
Well, it's still,
you know what that looks like right now? The way your hair is right at this moment, like old portraits of Abraham Lincoln. I think, did they never show the man a mirror before they said, "This is the president of the United States"? You think they'd show him a flipping mirror because his hair is like sticking out and stuff like that.
Well, no, I was laying down. I actually comb my hair. I part it sideways when I go to work. I part it sideways. I comb it so it's only sticking up on the side.
Yeah.
But I got this big wood portrait of Abraham.
I got to say, Audrey! Welcome, Audrey. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. She's on her break. Can't stay long. Love you all. Love you too, Audrey.
I had a break once, long ago.
What's a break?
I don't know. But I started off the day in my kitchen making coffee, stepped on some glass, split my toe wide open.
Nice.
And then at the end of the day, I split my finger wide open. So
it's an appendage kind of day.
And I took a tag you put on a shoe and it went right through, halfway through my finger.
Ow. And I was watching some old episodes of Ghost Adventures, and I thought I'd seen them all. And I'm watching whole seasons where I go, I don't remember any of these. There was somewhere they were in New Orleans. That's why I brought that up. Thinking, hey, field guy territory.
Probably in the Quarter. The whole French Quarter's haunted. There's not one building you
can't
go in that's haunted.
There's a fellow author. She is represented by my agent, Alexandria Weiss. She writes a lot of historical fiction, and she writes really cool kind of young adult category, meaning books like Twilight and stuff like those are all young adult. They're considered upper teens. And she writes murder mysteries and things like that and spooky stuff. She lives down there in New Orleans. And when I was down in Louisiana, I had totally planned to go over and visit her in New Orleans and never got a chance to do it.
Never did.
Never did. You'd think with all the extra time we seemed to have down there, so we didn't do anything other than do work, and then we were back at the trailer, we'd have had time. But it was taking a few days to drive out. We just never did it. So
that's always the thing, though. I mean,
yeah, ain't that the way it always is?
I'm hoping we're not the Lake Charles this year.
I'm hoping you're not either.
We avoided it last year. Well, I actually had the eye of a hurricane. That second one that hit Lake Charles, it actually came over my city first, and the eye of the storm was actually over where I lived, and then went that way towards Lake Charles. The second one, I can't remember. I don't know. We had like 4 of them hit last year.
So Lake Charles is kind of your patsy. Go get Lake Charles. Go get Lake Charles.
No, I don't. I wanted to go to Texas. Go that way. Go to
Just say we have more culture here in New Orleans. Go damage Lake Charles.
Go anywhere. No, I wanted to hit Atlanta. That's where all storms need to hit Atlanta.
Atlanta's not on the coast though, so it's got to go inland a little bit to get them.
That's fine. Let it hit the stadium over there.
There you go. Sean Stroik said being in the eye is interesting. So, Sean, great picture on your profile, brother. You and your young son on a horse. That's fantastic. So
we get the eyes of the hurricane all the time.
Yeah.
Hurricanes are a daily event, yearly event here. It's just this is the first one we've gotten this year. Actually, a hurricane went towards Steph in Massachusetts, and then a hurricane went and hit Texas before we actually got threatened. So I think my little got lost. She didn't realize. She forgot where Louisiana was.
There it is, which is hard to believe because Louisiana gets hit all the time.
we stick like a sore thumb.
Ain't that the truth?
Crazy.
Fieldy, I'm going to let you go. We'll talk. We got to talk about doing that interview. So let's try to connect tomorrow, brother.
Okie dokie.
All right. You have a good night. I'll talk to you later. See you later in the show here. All right, guys. Field guy. Always there. Hey, Steph Cuervo Queen. Good to see you in the chat room over there. And anybody else I'm missing coming in. So good to see you all tonight. We started a few minutes late tonight, 4 minutes late, I think it was, by the time I got the buttons pushed and we got ourselves rolling here. So let's skip any other kind of introductory material and let's kind of get into this because this is stuff we've talked about from a different angle before. We're still on the Jesus Potter Harry Christ series here. I've based this whole series on the book by Derek Murphy, which is subtitled The Fascinating Parallels Between Two of the World's Most Popular Literary Characters. Now, I was just talking to my neighbor, John, tonight of John and Bree fame, and we were sitting and talking a bit earlier about, his belief about the historical Jesus and so on, and talking about how this has been a controversy for a long, long time, centuries. Did Jesus really exist? I think he did. Was he an historical character? Yes, I believe he was. There are some who believe, even theological circles, which I don't know what draws them into Christian theology if they don't believe that Christ was anything special. But even within those circles, you've got some of those scholars that will deny the historical presence of Jesus. Now, we do know, and I think I've made this pretty clear, my stance on this, and we've talked about it in a couple of different series over the last couple of years about early Christianity and how it was not what we have today, totally different kind of Christianity, and that it's very possible that Jesus, while being a historical character, might have been somebody that is very different than we see in the biblical scripts. And so this is what I'm looking at for us tonight now. I want to get into this part of the whole Harry Potter and Jesus archetypes in literature. And the reason we're calling it literature, for those of you who believe in the Christ, I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from their faith. I got to put that disclaimer in here, but I am saying, it's not a but on what I just said, it's but in addition to, I should say, I believe that there is room to examine this and find out, was he an historical character? And so doubting Jesus is kind of the theme for tonight's program. And there's an ancient and a modern controversy about all of this. Reverend R. Taylor, if you saw the show lead in the ad for tonight's show, I had this quote in there. Reverend R. Taylor in 1834 said, "To the question then, on what grounds do you deny that such a person as Jesus existed as a man? The proper answer is, because his existence as a man has, from the earliest day on which it can be shown to have been asserted, been as earnestly and strenuously denied, and that not by enemies of the Christian name or unbelievers of the Christian faith, but by the most intelligent, most learned, most sincere of the Christian name, whoever left the world proofs of their intelligence and learning in their writings, and of their sincerity in their sufferings. So, what we've explored so far on this series, the Jesus, Potter, Harry, Christ, are the similarities between Jesus and Harry Potter, and we ended with the question, is Jesus, like Harry, a purely literary figure? And so to begin with, we have to understand that this isn't a new question. It's not New Age Christians and the new age of denying God and religion. This has been around for as long as Jesus has been around as a religion, as the founder of a religion. So we have to understand that. And as Reverend Taylor pointed out, as far back as 1834, the idea that Jesus Christ existed as an historical man has been denied not only by modern critics, but also by Christian communities, now branded as heretics, since the earliest periods of the Christian movement. Saint Ignatius, for example, who was martyred before 117 AD, that's less than 100 years after the time of the life of Christ, 70 years maybe, that he fought against the Docetist heresy, which denied that Jesus had come in the flesh. Docetists, most likely with the Platonic split between spirit and matter in the mind, believed that Jesus had come in the appearance or semblance of a human only, but did not have a physical body. Ignatius had to vigorously dispute the claim that Jesus was born, crucified, and raised only in appearance. T.R. Glover captures the spirit of his writing by saying, "Men around him spoke of a phantom crucified by the deluded soldiers amid the deluded Jews. No, cries Ignatius over and over, he truly suffered, he truly rose, ate, and drank, and was no daemon without a body. None of it is seeming, it is all truly, truly, truly. He has been called hysterical, death before him, his Lord's reality denied, and only time and for one word, truly." Now, overlooking Ignatius's zeal and his emphasis on the Jesus who truly existed, he said several times, how can we reconcile the traditional account of a Christian history with the fact that the early heretics denied that Jesus had come in the flesh? The Docetist understanding of Jesus is not some late scheme. The New Testament epistle of John shows that similar beliefs were active and threateningly popular very early in the Christian communities. And this is John who wrote this, John, the favored disciple, that there's so much ado over. He wrote this later in life. He said, and remember, he was a contemporary of Jesus. He said, "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits, whether they're of God. Because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Hereby know ye the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesseth that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that confesseth not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is not of God. And this is that spirit of Antichrist, whereof you've heard that it should come, and even now already it is in the world." That's 1 John 4, 1 through 3. Now, rather than the traditional account of one Catholic universal message of Jesus Christ, in the first few centuries of Christianity, there were dozens of factions out there in Christianity, each of which believed very different things about Jesus, and many of whom believed that the major events in Jesus' life occurred only in appearance. At the same time, classically educated scholar, I was squelching a belch there, folks, just to be totally above board and honest and transparent. And so at the same time, classically educated scholars familiar with ancient philosophy and poetry and religion have always been struck by the similarities between Jesus Christ and other mythological figures. Jesus raised the dead. He healed the sick. And so did Asclepius. Jesus provided wine at a wedding feast and suffered that so humanity might be saved, as did Dionysus. Jesus descended into hell and had powers to make the lion and the lamb lay down together, just like Orpheus. These parallels were much more obvious in the first few centuries of the Christian movement, when these other figures played an active role in religion, spiritual practice, literature, culture, than they are even today. And hence Celsus, a pagan philosopher who wrote a condemnation of the Christian movement in the 2nd century AD, could ask this. He said, "Are these distinctive happenings unique to the Christians? And if so, how are they unique? Or are ours to be accounted myths and theirs believed? What reason do the Christians give for the distinctiveness of their beliefs? In truth, there is nothing at all unusual about what the Christians believe, except that they believe to the exclusion of more comprehensive truths about God." Now, this alone should come as a surprise to those who are familiar with the traditional accounts of Christian history. Jesus was supposed to be something entirely different and new and unique. He was the Son of God. His miracles, his death, his resurrection were expected to shock and awe the world. Even his humility and ethics are assumed to be in stark contrast to the wild revelry of the pagans all around him. But actually, as Celsus pointed out, there was nothing new in the doctrine of Christianity that was at all surprising to their contemporaries. Writing several decades earlier than Celsus and trying to justify his beliefs to critical outsiders, the apologist Justin Martyr, who converted to Christianity around 130 AD, so about 100 years after the time of Jesus, and was martyred around 165 AD, acknowledges the parallels between Jesus and pagan figures without ever making the modern claim that these similarities are simply coincidental. Justin Martyr said this: "When we say that the word, capital W, another not pseudonym, another name for Jesus, the Word who is firstborn of God," and this, by the way, comes from the beginning of the book of John. "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the same was in the beginning with God." So when we say that the Word, who is the firstborn of God, was produced without sexual union, and that he, Jesus Christ, our teacher, was crucified and died and rose again and ascended into heaven, we propound nothing different from what you believe regarding those whom you esteem sons of Jupiter, the same as Zeus. For you know how many sons your esteemed writers ascribe to Jupiter, Mercury, the interpreting word and teacher of all. Asclepius, I can't pronounce this ever. It's the same name as earlier. You know how they put the A and the E together? I don't know how you pronounce it. Asclepius. Asclepius. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Who, though he was a great physician, he was struck by thunderbolts, and so ascended to heaven. And Bacchus, which is the same as Dionysus, too, after he'd been torn limb from limb, and Hercules, when he'd committed himself to the flames to escape his toils. And the sons of Leda, and Dioscuri, and Perseus, son of Danae, and Bellerophon, Bellerophon. It's just all these vowels all put together sometimes in these ancient names. Who though sprung from mortals, rose to heaven on the horse Pegasus. And so Justin Martyr's formal argument is that although other pagan gods are also said to have been born without sexual union, crucified, died, rose, and ascended into heaven, Jesus Christ physically and actually performed these feats and is therefore unique. And by the way, it was Justin Martyr who coined the phrase or the term diabolical mimicry. He insisted that Satan, who knew the actual living, real Son of God was coming in the form of man, created these other false messiahs with all the same criteria as Jesus ahead of time, so as to confound the minds of men when the real Savior came. Like, God wasn't going to be powerful enough to undo that. But that was what Justin Martyr put forward. He also said, but in no instance, not even in any of those called sons of Jupiter, did they imitate the being crucified. For it was not understood by them, all the things said of it having been put symbolically. And that was in Justin Martyr's first apology. Now, the argument is no different from the assertions that Harry Potter and Jesus Christ are fundamentally different, because Jesus was real. However, this distinction is only possible with one word, folks: faith. Faith that Jesus genuinely performed the supernatural deeds that other figures accomplished only symbolically. Thus, the critical question is whether Jesus was an historical figure who performed his miraculous feats of power in the flesh rather than just in appearance. And the importance of this criterion was not lost on the early church fathers, faced on all sides with the criticism that the gospel stories were spiritual allegories and not intended as historical truth. The early church fathers argued passionately for the fact of Jesus' physical body, that they needed to argue at all and so vehemently that Jesus was a real person, despite his similarities to other traditions, is an indication that his claim wasn't widely accepted. If you've got to put up a major argument for it and write apologies for it, you're really kind of showing that the argument is out there and it's there and you've got to kind of counter it. So this was widely accepted in the first century, late first century, and all throughout the second century. This is where we said by the end of the second century, the literalist Orthodox Church, which became the Roman Catholic Church, won the fight. They were putting to death people who were on the other side of this equation. The power of Christ, the love of God, constrains us to put you to death. And so they needed to argue this. And the purpose of what we're talking about now, this particular section, is really to show first that the claim of Jesus being either in part or totally comparable to the mythologies, of other cultures, it's the soda pop I'm drinking, folks, if you missed that earlier, is not, this isn't a modern invention of conspiracy fanatics around Christianity. But it's been argued and supported by some of the greatest thinkers in history all the way back to within the first century of the time of Jesus himself. And that shows you that the argument was already there. Was he a real guy or was he just made up by his followers? And if he was a real guy, was the stuff written about him made up by his followers? And it's that this current of academic consensus that there was an historical founder behind Christianity is the product of a specific trend in academic thought, rather than a conclusion based on reliable evidence. So at the same time, the arguments and the quotations presented here aren't to be construed as an argument for or against the existence of Jesus Christ. I don't want you to do that. I'm not trying to create an argument for or against. Many of the things that I'm presenting here have already been criticized, called into question, or disputed as academic research into the subject has progressed. My goal in presenting this material at all to you, just like I said when we presented it in other formats, is only to demonstrate that a modern controversy over the historical Jesus exists and that it's had a long and substantial history. It's not new, folks, and that in effect the jury is kind of still out. And like I said just a little bit earlier, the only way you get over this hump is not necessarily by extant historical proof and evidence. You get over that hump by faith. So I also want to show that certain claims regarding Jesus are not modern delusions of fringe scholars. In fact, there are a few claims made about Jesus today that were not made centuries ago. And the reason a handful of writers continue to re-raise these arguments is because most people are completely unaware that they can be made at all. And after demonstrating that the hypothesis of Jesus Christ as Christianity's historical founder is not the only logical possibility, and that the evidence used to support him is not unanimously accepted, can we move into more speculative theories? And once you cover this data, you start to see how there can be a literary Jesus as opposed to an historical Jesus. And so I'm just going to check in on the chat room because I tend to ignore the chat room when I get a little too... the mic's a little hot there, Captain. What have I got going? It doesn't look hot here. Hang on. Let's see what this level says. Is that doing anything to the level for you guys? Right there. I brought it down a bit there. And my levels are... Somebody's been messing with my buttons over here again. Not my gumdrop buttons. There. Is that any better on the sound if I was a little hot? Sorry, guys. I didn't double check my settings before I came in because I was running a couple of minutes late tonight. And so I didn't look over at the soundboard. I just flipped the switch and on we went. So Matt Finn goes on to say, if we had a mad historical finds that proved Bible stories, the question is, would the powers at be allow us to see them? That's a good question. It's like politics. It's like the last election. It's like COVID. It's like everything else that's going on out there. Would the powers that be allow us to see the truth anyway? It's a good question. Alien existence, first contact. Would the powers that be reveal that information to the public? A little distorted before. It's good now. Yeah, my squelch was way up. So, not squelch, my was a little high. Barbie D said, I saw Sean S. over your buttons before. Ask him. There you go. Rainey was over my buttons earlier. And so, and you go over to my Facebook page, by the way, folks. I took a shot of her today as we were packing boxes up in the kids' room, looking mighty, I would say yummy from a man point of view, but looking mighty stalwart and gorgeous today, even though she's sweaty and packing boxes. So Matt Finn said, we know the answer is no. So there you go. All right, let's get back into this a little bit. In the year 1600, here's where the modern debate over the historical Jesus really starts. In 1600, scientist and astronomer Giordano Bruno reiterated Celsus's argument that the gospel stories of Jesus Christ were akin to pagan mythologies. He didn't see anything wrong with that. He said it's the same story we've read in the pagan mythologies. And unfortunately, at the time, the church didn't permit such blasphemous accusations. For the things I'm saying now, just relating the information, I could be arrested and tortured as a heretic. So, after a 7-year trial, Bruno was burned at the stake. As R.E. Witt relates, he was excommunicated by an obscurantist ecclesiastism. He went, words we don't use very often, an obscurantist ecclesiasticism. He went to the stake for his beliefs. He was convinced that the wisdom and magic-born religion of ancient Egypt excelled the fanatical theory that burnt dissident thinkers as heretics. For the biblical record was on par with the Greek myths. Refusing to retract his teachings, he met his doom dauntlessly, for he had less cause than his judges to fear the verdict of history, and would snap his fingers at them in warning. Giordano Bruno, the unfrocked monk, perished on the 16th of February, 1600, for his intransigent denial that Christianity was unique. It's the only reason he died a torturous death. Now, Bruno's death represents perhaps the birth pains of the Enlightenment, an age when mankind flexed its mental prowess and attempted to find logical answers through reason rather than by faith, superstition, or revelation. And although most scholars attribute the movement to the 18th or the 19th centuries, it can be traced back to Descartes, cogito ergo sum, or even the scientific revolution that began about a century earlier, published on the Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres in 1543. An interest in classicism and the translation of the mythologies from all these newly discovered parts of the world, critical biblical scholarship, along with the weakening power of the church censorship, led to the publication of many dozen treatises investigating the historical nature of Jesus Christ. And one of the earliest of these essays was published by G.E. Lessing, based on the notes by Reimarus, and under the general title Wolfenbüttel Fragments, and between 1774 and 1778. Now, right during the beginning of the American Revolution is when this was out. It concludes that Jesus was wholly terrestrial and never meant to start a new religion. French Enlightenment writer and philosopher Voltaire, 1694 to 1778, although maintaining the idea of an historical crucified founder, cautions that very little of the Gospels could be taken at face value. Voltaire argued that the Gospels were written by persons acquainted with nothing, full of contradictions and imposture, and that the whole history of Jesus, only a fanatic or a stupid knave would deny it, should be examined in the light of reason. Constantin Francois Volney and Charles Francois Dupuis, two great thinkers of the French Enlightenment, published works in the 1790s claiming that the stories of Jesus Christ found in the Gospels, as well as many other myths, were based on movements of the sun throughout the zodiac. According to Dupuis, Jesus is still less than God. He is like all the deities. Sorry, I lapsed into Italian, not French. He is like all the deities that men have adored. The sun. Christianity is a solar myth. When we shall have shown that the pretended history of a God who is born of a virgin in the winter solstice, who is resuscitated at Easter or at the vernal equinox, and having descended into hell, who brings with him a retinue of 12 apostles whose chief possesses all the attributes of Janus, a God, conqueror of the prince of darkness, who translates mankind into the empire of light, and who heals the woes of the world, is only a solar fable. It will be almost as unnecessary to inquire whether there was a man called Christ, as it so is to inquire whether some prince is called Hercules. So the writings of Constantin Volney were also influential in challenging the claim that Jesus was historical. In 1808, Napoleon was under the influence of Volney when, in a conversation he had had with Wieland at Weimar, he said it was a great question to decide whether Jesus had existed. Another theory was raised in Germany around the same time by Barth and Venturini, who introduced a skeptical movement into Jesus' life that so far forsook the gospel representation as to leave his real historical form largely a matter of conjecture. Jesus, they said, was a protege of the Essenes, who had drawn upon secret wisdom from Babylonia, Egypt, India, and Greece. Remember, we talked about these things when we spoke of the mystery religions. Thus, Jesus was a reveler of ancient and secret wisdom, but not the Savior portrayed in the Gospels. How's this hit you? I don't want to say I have a bunch of atheists or a bunch of agnostics or a bunch of non-Christians in my audience. There are many of you who have professed that you believe these things. How does this stuff hit you when you read this stuff or hear about this stuff? Thomas Jefferson, one of our presidents, the man who penned the Constitution of the United States in a book now frequently called the Jefferson Bible, wrote under the premise that the gospel authors had incorporated both events and teachings that could not be historically accurate to Jesus himself. In 1829, Reverend Robert Taylor published the Diegesis, the Diegesis, and not the name of Jesus, the Diegesis, which professes Christianity did not originate with an historical founder, and in fact has far more ancient roots. Prior to this work, Taylor founded the Christian Evidence Society, among whose central themes were that the persons in the Gospels never existed, and that the events in the Gospels never happened. Taylor was thrown in jail for blasphemy and conspiracy to overthrow a Christian religion in the 1700s, the 1800s. And a more influential and controversial work was David Friedrich Strauss's The Life of Jesus, which was first published in 1835 and translated into English in 1846. The Life of Jesus is an attempt to remove all of the mythical elements from the gospel accounts in order to search for the genuine figure behind them, as which such Strauss is considered a pioneer in the historical investigation of Jesus. It says here about him, the first gospel accounts, in Strauss's opinion, have not been drawn up from an historical point of view. They do not relate the events as these took place, but express certain ideas by means of images and symbols, or, to employ the exact term that Strauss makes use of, by myth. What's important to the notion of the myth is not the idea of unreality, but that of a symbolical expression of a higher truth. The mythical explanation seems to Strauss the synthesis which resolves the antibook between the naturalist and the supernatural explanations of the life of Jesus. So Strauss's research was continued by Bruno Bauer, who accepted Strauss's premise, but he focused on the mythical rather than historical parts of Jesus. Starting in 1840, he argued that Jesus was merely a fusion of Greek, Roman, and Jewish theologies. In Christ and the Caesars, written in 1877, Bauer argued that the language of the New Testament was more in line with Stoicism and Roman culture than Judaism. Herman Dettering notes, the demon to whom Bauer submitted had whispered to him that all of the Pauline letters were inauthentic, and that an historical person named Jesus very probably never existed. Wilhelm Reed would later, 1901, repeat many of Bauer's ideas in his book, The Messianic Secret. And this is going back in the other direction. Vie de Jesus, The Life of Jesus, by Ernest Renan in 1863, mostly a compilation of German criticism, was directed at the public and consequently attracted more attention. Renan's novel paints a literary picture of a very human, gentle dreamer and makes the claim that the idea of a risen God comes from the passion of a deluded woman. In 1875, Kersey Graves published the world's 16 Crucified Saviors, or Christianity Before Christ. In his preface, Graves states that Jesus taught no new doctrine or moral precept, that he inculcated the same religion and morality as other moral teachers, and that he differs so little in his character preaching and the practical life form of some of the Oriental gods that no person whose mind is not deplorably warped and biased by early training can call one divine, while the other he considers human. And so around the same time, the Rosetta Stone, found by Napoleon's army in 1799, translated by Egyptologist Jean-Francois Champollion, in 1822, inspired a frenzied academic study of Egyptian mythologies. And this movement motivated specifically Egyptian comparisons between Christianity and mythology. And in 1877, W.R. Cooper published The Horus Myth in its relation to Christianity, in which he writes this: the works of art, the ideas, the expressions, and the heresies of the first 4 centuries of the Christian era cannot be well studied without a right comprehension of the nature and influence of the Horus myth. We cannot ignore these facts. We have, as Christians, no reason to be afraid of them. Egyptologist Gerald Massey, if you will, in the late 1800s, he was the author of The Gnostic and Historic Christianity, and other works also compared Jesus' biography with Egyptian mythology. Once having made this identification, however, he goes on to conclude that the figure of Jesus is completely mythological, not historical at all, and could never have been historical. In a private edition of his lectures, published at the turn of the 20th century, he says, "Nothing is more certain, according to honest evidence, than that the Christian scheme of redemption is founded on a fable misinterpreted, and that the prophecy of fulfillment was solely astronomical, and the coming one, as the Christ who came in the end of the age, or of the world, was but a metaphorical figure, a type of time, from the first, which he could never take form in historic personality any more than time in person could come out of a clock case when the hour strikes. That no Jesus could become a Nazarene by being born at or taken to Nazareth, and that the history in our Gospels is from beginning to end the identifiable story of the Sun God and the Gnostic Christ, who never could be made flesh." And I hate to tell you, folks, I'm going to end there. I have so much material here. So much material here that we could just keep going and keep going and keep going. But I want to end for a few minutes because we started late. We'll go a little late. I want to ask you, and I want to talk to you a little bit about how this all strikes you. What does this mean to you? What does this mean to your faith? What kind of faith do you have when you start hearing these arguments? Now, we're going to get into the other side of these arguments as well, but this is the argument that is presented for Jesus being not an historical character, but a literary one. Matt Finn says, "I believe the historical Jesus and believe the stories probably have at least a gain of truth and a lot of means of man's interpretation. Questioning has never led me to lose my core beliefs." Matt, I'm really on the same page with you. I question a lot of things. That doesn't mean I have abandoned everything I once believed. I ask the questions I want to know. Grain, Matt Finn says, yep. Scott Ellen says, "Thanks, Scotty. I was listening while watering the lawn." That's pretty cool. Isn't technology great? You can take it with you while you're watering the grass. Doug Stack said he'll be sleeping in 4 minutes. Yeah, it's after 11 o'clock, Doug. It's nighty-night time. And so I'm kind of with Matt Finn on this too. I tend to really believe that there was an historical Jesus. I believe there was something more to his ministry. But there are a lot of people who think that he fits into the category of matching the other mythological messiahs that were there before him. Was Justin Martyr right in the 2nd century when he said that all these other messiahs that came before Jesus were just diabolical mimicry, phonies produced ahead of time to draw man's attention away from the real Son of God that would come later? That one's a stretch for me to believe that. So wherever you are on this issue, don't stop listening to this tonight. This is not the end of the argument, not the end of the presentation of all of this. There is so much more to this. So you need to stay tuned if you want to hear more about this as we develop this train of thought. Now, there's a possibility I may be out of town tomorrow and for the weekend. If I'm out of town tomorrow, I might be going up to my friend Andy's to do some work for him. If I go up there, we'll still do a show tomorrow night. Same bat time, same bat channel. And we'll do a Sunday morning show as well. We'll make it all happen. Monday is the first day of school for my little Ellery. Praise Jesus. She needs to be away from home for 6.5 hours a day. And the other two start on Tuesday in Flynn in middle school and Rowan in elementary school. Respectfully, 4th and 6th grades. So the time is nigh. It is upon us. Yea, the sun will shine again next week when all 3 children are gone for 6.5 hours of the day. Oh, I'm telling you, Rainey and I are so looking forward to that. There are days where the souls of both man and woman in this household are tried. Hey, Brianna Learman. Hello and good night. Sorry, I've been busy with homework. Hope your homework went well, darling. I'm going to go step out onto the patio. If you and John want to come over for a few minutes, come on over. How's that for a public invite on the radio? So, folks, thanks for being here tonight. And remember, this stuff, there's so much more to this than just what we have covered so far. So if you want to come back and hear more about this as we develop this whole thing and look at other versions of this, other sides to these arguments, come on back tomorrow night and then all next week too. So, as always, I want to wish you all a very good night and live long and prosper.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.